Showtime.
Welcome to episode 24 of Crosstown Cardboard with my great friend Craig at New York City Sports Cards, the math teacher and the soccer coach. And we're holding up a couple Kobe cards. Craig, yours is a lot cooler than mine. An auto. Mine is just a base card from Topps Finest, a PSA 10, because it's the Kobe episode 24. And in this episode, we're talking about falling out of love with a PC card. And I might as well introduce myself at Carmine's Cards, the sports and news broadcaster from New York, but now in Southern Oregon. And Craig, we brought up this episode topic because you had an interesting conversation on Instagram about one of your PC cards, and it kind of assisted you in falling out of love with a different PC card. But before we get into that, I want to ask, how are you doing and how do you feel about our Kobe episode 24?
Rest in peace, Kobe and Gigi, first and foremost. But excited to talk about this particular episode today because the topic was sparked by a good friend of mine in Harry Kane Cards on Instagram. And he is the same person who came up with the phrase "a podcast card." So now here he is providing us with a podcast card and coming up with a podcast topic. So our guy is a big helper in this Crosstown Cardboard content creation without him even knowing it.
And you know what's funny? The podcast card that he suggested was also Kobe with the soccer ball.
God.
Episode 24, and now he's contributing to episode 24 with this other assist.
Thank you. I'm going to make sure Travis listens to this, so you're the homie. Thank you. But yeah, I think you hear others talk about when you look into your personal collection and you sift through it, and you got to make that tough decision sometimes of, damn, you know what? I got to sell this card to fund that one. That's not really the dilemma that I face. For me, it's more like naturally these cards just, for some reason, and the reasons we're going to get into, you just fall out of love with it. A card maybe you had for a while that at one point you bought, and now you look back on it and you say, why did I buy this card? But maybe that's just us progressing in the hobby and growing and changing our interests. But we're going to get into a couple of examples of instances where we've just fallen out of love with the card that we bought and the reason why.
Yeah, and so it could be, and I feel like in your case, and I would love for you to dive into this topic that sparked the topic idea that we're talking about today of falling out of love with a PC card, because it wasn't really so much of you thinking, why did I buy this card just because it was a silly purchase, but really because of what was brought to light about another PC card you bought influencing how you felt about this other card. So can you explain that a little bit more?
I will preface this with the example I gave you on our pre-recording that I've never sat courtside at an NBA game, but it is very high up there on my bucket list. I don't care where it is. I don't care what the teams are. And I don't want to trip the players, but I want to have the capability of tripping players for, that I'm that close.
Or you could do the Jason Kidd of spilling the drink
Exactly.
by accident, to get a little timeout. That's how close you want to be.
Right. So Larry David tripping Shaq-esque, if you will.
Boom.
For all you Curb fans out there. But the equivalent of what I'm going to explain here is if I ever do sit courtside, if you sit courtside at a game, it's going to be hard to go to the nosebleeds the next day. Right?
True.
Once you've hit the mountaintop, you might not look at other seats the same. I fear of that. But recently, Weston McKennie, he's a midfielder for the U.S. national team, and he plays for Leeds United in the Premier League right now. And he's somebody that I collect. A couple weeks ago, I traded one of his 2018 Optic Purple Velocity rookie cards and a PSA 9 out of 125. There's a cool story behind me getting that card because I got it from National from a collector who owns a store in South Korea.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was a fun trade to get that. So at least there was a good story behind it. But I traded that card a couple of weeks ago, actually for a loss. I fell out of love with it. And I think part of it was it wasn't super, super limited. It's a card I could get back. But a big reason is I'm looking through my collection and I'm looking at this Weston McKennie 1-of-1 Superfractor and a PSA 10 that I
Yeah.
picked up from National. A pop one, if you couldn't guess.
That's
I'm looking
sweet.
at this. I'm looking at this rated rookie numbered at a 25 PSA 10 and a pop 4.
Also, Weston McKennie. One of your
Also,
is he
Weston
is he
McKinney.
your favorite guy, or is he right up
Yeah,
there with Pulisic?
he's my favorite player, right?
Okay, number one.
So,
Okay.
in talking to Travis, his exact quote in talking about these Weston McKinney cards was, "But seriously," and I'm quoting him, "What McKinney card are you going to go after you got that 1 of 1?" And it's so true because it feels like if you really collect a player and you attain these high end cards, you set the bar. You set a new standard for kind of what you look for. So maybe I didn't have these cards at the time, but now that I've attained bigger Weston McKinney cards, those lower end ones, they just don't hit the same.
So this leads me to a reporter follow-up question, what we call accountability questions when we're talking about like asking a mayor or asking a leader of an athletic organization a follow-up to hold them accountable for their decisions. Let me ask you this now. You have the 1 of 1. So does that mean that you're not going to collect like that out of 199 ever again? Or you know what I mean? Like, because you still want to add to your McKinney PC. So, like, even though you're probably not going to hit that standard or rarely again, how do you consider adding to the McKinney PC now?
Well, if at the time I was willing to pick up a card in a PSA 9 numbered out of 125, that was, an acceptable card or something I'd be looking to trade for or buy. So it's not to say that I'm only settling for 1 of 1s, but somewhere in between a card numbered out of 1 and a card numbered out of 125.
Okay.
I like
So,
lower pop type stuff.
it's interesting because you, even though you really like that card that you moved on from, you were open to having your collecting PC feeling influenced by a point somebody brought up. So that's interesting because you're always learning on that front, even
Always
though,
learning.
yeah, even though like you have been collecting McKinney, and it's just interesting how when somebody brings up one point, that can change your thoughts on your PC.
That's it. And that's what we hope to bring on this podcast, that you take out one little tidbit from something we say and it starts to expand your thoughts on your collecting.
So did that just make it easier for you to part with that card and involve it in a trade? Or like, because you also, I'm sure you didn't just move on from it like, oh, I got to sell this immediately. Like, what was your thought in the trade that you moved it on into?
That was, which we talked about last episode, part of the Tim Tebow and the Walter Payton card. So I traded it
Okay.
for a little more liquidity, which I could then hopefully use to fund something that I really do love a lot.
Okay. So your goal is down the line to move that McKinney that was once in your PC for maybe some more money to add to your PC maybe again in the future.
Yeah. I mean, my goal ultimately is always to try to pick up a card that goes into the Zion case right here and stays there. But sometimes
Yeah.
it takes 5, 6, 7, 8 transactions to get there.
Yeah. So one of the factors is when you lose some love for a PC card or fall out of love with it is when you get a better card of that guy.
That's pretty much it.
Okay, so that's one factor. So how about this, Craig? When I picked up this Magic Johnson flawless patch auto with a chunky patch from one of his letters, numbered at a 10, the gold edition, 2018-19, the vertical flawless patch at a 10 with the on-card auto. And I got to tell you, I picked this up at the Burbank show in a trade. If you've watched our Burbank vlog part 2, or if you haven't, I would highly suggest watching any of our vlogs to see us in action and, bring you to a show that maybe you weren't able to go to. And so I have to be honest, I picked this up. I traded partially into it with 3 cards and $1,000 in cash, and I was into it for $1,650. I think it's at least a $2,000 card. So I was cool with where I was at on it. And I looked at it. It had a soft corner on one side, but I'm like, you know what? let me grade this, because I saw a BGS 9 at one point went for 2,500, like probably 8 months ago, summer of 2022. So I'm like, if this gets a 9, I could easily claim that it's a $2,500 card. And they haven't, one hasn't publicly sold since then. So they're super rare with the vertical at a 10, very desirable card from a flawless set. So I sent it off to BGS grading at the Burbank show. I wanted to get a raw card review, but I'm such a rookie that I didn't realize if you go there on Sunday, they can't guarantee that they can get it back to you same day before the show ends. So I had to officially send it off. So I'm like, okay, I wanted to get a raw card review to see if I should fully go through with it. If it doesn't come back the grade I want, I would just take it out of the raw card review.
How long did
So
it
it
take
came,
door to door?
oh, it was quick. It was like, I think it was 3.5 weeks.
Oh, we'll
And they
take
and they
that.
told, well, it wasn't the standard. It was like the one level up from standard, because they said the standard would be 2 to 3 months. The like one step up from that was like a month and a half. So I
Yeah,
was
we,
like, all right,
we ain't got time for that.
yeah, I was like, let me do it a little quicker. So they guaranteed a month and a half. I got it back in 3.5 weeks. So basically half that time. So it came back. I was like, at least a 9. I was hoping for a 9. Came back an 8. So it's a little bit better because BGS recently went to the silver labels for the 8s instead of the paper labels. So that makes it a little bit better. The corners, they gave me a 7.5. And I thought like the one corner was a little soft, but I didn't think 7.5. Centering was a 9.5, edges a 9, surface an 8, overall grade of an 8. So all that explanation just to say that I thought it was going to be in my PC, but now because it came back an 8 instead of at least a 9, I'm much more likely to fall out of love with it. Like I would trade down off of it for like a 2,000 to 2,500 value. Now I'm into it after the grading costs and the insurance and everything for another 100. So I'm into it for 1,750. So that's one of the reasons that I recently saw for falling out of love with what I thought was going to be a PC card, just because of the rarity, the on-card auto, the chunky patch, that now I've fallen out of love with it a little bit.
Still a nice card. Forgetting about the grade, and at least
Yeah.
one of the smartest things Beckett did was changing that ugly 8 grade. Which, man, I got a couple here.
Yeah.
Like you look at this, the 8 grade used to be at the paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it's interesting that you say that about the grade because we're both active. It's not all just PCing. We like to flip, and yeah, I mean the grade could be a factor. If you hope to PC a card, you think it's nice and clean, but all of a sudden doesn't get the grade you want. Sometimes that just doesn't hit the same.
Yeah.
So I get that. You hear buy the card, not the grade, which I support, but I also totally can get behind you wanting to move on from it and just start a new adventure with it.
Yeah, because if I'm PCing a card, I want to feel secure on a lot of different fronts that it's going to hold its value. So, like, for example, the Larry Bird, and this is, I think we've referenced this card every single episode since I got it.
Worth it.
Yeah, because it's my favorite card in my collection. And I traded away the Tiger Woods SP Authentic rookie auto that's behind me for it. And it's the flawless dual vertical patches from 14-15 flawless with the on-card auto, chunky patches, numbered out of 25, and it's the BGS 9.5, which is a pop 2, but it's the highest graded of those two. And because it's a BGS 9.5, I have much more confidence of it holding its value, like because it's, pretty much, I mean, other than a BGS 10, which is rare, and then a Black Label 10, which is extremely rare.
Yep.
Having it in a BGS 9.5 or a PSA 10 of that card, I'm much less likely to want to move on from it or fall out of love with it because I know it's a super high grade. So I feel like that's one of the biggest factors of me falling out of love with a card is if I start to ruminate and continue thinking about the factors of why I like this in my PC. Now that this is an 8, like you said, it's an awesome card, but it just doesn't give me all those levels of security on something that I want in my PC. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I get the levels of security, and I kind of felt something similar when you talked about holding its value. So Giannis is a player that I collect, and around this time last year, so gearing up for another playoff run, I was picking up a lot of different Giannis type stuff. Everything from game worn jerseys, game worn patches, on card autographs. I had some sticker autographs. I had a lot of prism colored cards.
Okay.
And as the playoffs was approaching, I'm like, okay, I do love Giannis, but I don't need all of these. So when is the time? When do you fall out of love with the card? It was just me taking a step back at all my Giannis collection and figuring, okay, yes, I want to collect Giannis, but in what lane do I want to collect them at? So, for example, Jordan collectors, I'm sure, aren't collecting every single Jordan card possibly made. There are some Jordan collectors who collect autographs. There are some Jordan collectors who specialize in 90s inserts. So for me, it was okay, of these Giannis cards, what do I really like? And I stuck with the on-card autographs from his early years and the game-worn patches. Everything else, especially I had some like second, third, fourth year numbered Prism cards. I'm like, you know what? I just don't see this staying in my collection for a long time. I don't see it holding its value. It's not as special and unique as the autographs. So I fell out in love with those. I sold them during the run-up, and I kept all the Giannis stuff that I love and I still have from over a year ago.
Okay, nice. So I think I just like to provide some type of recaps like in the midst of all of our explanations. So like just to boil it down, the 3 reasons so far that we've listed as far as falling out of love with a PC card. The first one that you mentioned was getting a better card,
Getting a banger of that player.
getting a banger of that player that then makes the other ones more movable because they're not as cool and you don't have as close of a connection to them, or they're not as valuable as the other one. The second one is when it's not the grade that you had hoped for. And the third one is when you just simply have too many of that player where you're like, okay, I can move some of these because I have more reinforcements that I like more.
Yes, and not just moving it for the sake of moving it. Like if I loved prisms, they probably would have stayed. But I'm
Yeah.
taking a macro look at everything, and those cards just didn't. Is the third time I'm saying this, and there's a reason for it. Those cards just didn't hit the same for
Now,
whatever reason that might be.
now, how about this also? It seems like, and I've felt this way too, just time being a factor as far as like you've had those for a while, you like looking at them, but even with a relationship sometimes too, you have a relationship with your cards, you have a relationship us, growing up until you got married now, different girlfriends or whatever your relationship was. And sometimes the time just that spark isn't quite there anymore.
Wow, I love the connection to cardboard in real life. You're so philosophical, Carmine. And I just had a random thought that I needed to just put out there.
Okay, do it.
Looking at the uniform that you're wearing, Western Union, and I could just picture cutting out the Western Union logo and making that like a logo patch card of yours one day.
Let's go. A little logo action. Now, not to offend our boy Cousin Oz from the Cousins Collectibles podcast and the Wolf Pack, but I'm currently wearing a Nikola Jokic jersey. And, he's a big Embiid guy. He's really, really going after his Philadelphia 76ers, Joel Embiid, to finally win an MVP and prevent the Joker from winning 3 in a row. So don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole, but we do have a very exciting guest coming up to continue our Philly series of collectors. We've had 3 so far. This is probably going to maybe top it off with our 4th guest in a few weeks. So we don't want to say too much about that because I don't want it to fall through, but it's somebody from the broadcast realm that you have probably seen on national TV before.
Why don't you just hold up a picture of him while you're at it?
I just want to tease. You're the king
Or
of the
her,
tease.
or her, him or her.
Or her. Yes, we don't want to
No,
give
no.
too much away. So let me ask you this, Craig, because you mentioned the philosophy. I got this now, this magic. We're going to go back to referencing the flawless magic on card auto, numbered out of 10 with a chunky patch, BGS 8. What's your thoughts on having this continue to be in the BGS 8 slab or cracking it to put it in a one touch and have it raw?
Funny you should say. Maybe we could have a little talk therapy session right now because I have a card in a similar situation.
Okay.
This is actually a really cool one. You ready for this?
Yes.
So Panini Status is a brand that was only out for a couple of years. Tatum's rookie year and Luka's rookie year. So 2017-18, 2018-19. And they had a set called Draft Night Signatures, which the concept is the night they got drafted, Panini had them sign a bunch of stickers. So
Okay.
in theory, this is their first autograph card, right?
Yeah.
I bought one of those value boxes. It wasn't Boombox. I think it was called Collectible Card Club. Early pandemic. So I paid $50 for a mix of packs, and there was one single pack of 2017-18 Panini Status. And in that one single pack, I pulled the Jason Tatum draft night signatures.
Dude, that's nice.
And get this, this is numbered 1 out of 31. So in theory, this is the first autograph of Jason Tatum, at least on a sticker in the Panini
Wow.
brand.
But that's got to be, I mean, looking at it, if you're watching on the Crosstown Cardboard YouTube, that's got to be a fat sticker because that's a
It is.
very tall
It is.
auto.
It's fat. And I got absolutely robbed by Beckett because this is a thick card. And
Okay.
thick cards are tough to grade. 9.5
Right.
edges, 9.5 surface, 9 corners. They give me a 7.5 on centering.
Oh, really?
Yeah, brutal. But the point is,
How
I
is
got
that centering a 7? The card is off center where the action is to begin with. So how do you?
listen, I got absolutely robbed. I'm gonna have to talk to someone over at Beckett. But point being,
Wow.
card is in a BGS 8, which kind of looks ugly, especially with this paper slab. So
Yep.
your question was, what do you do with it? In this
Yeah.
case, this is such a unique card that I look at it as I don't mind keeping it in here because at least it's preserved.
Yeah.
If I ever want to one day crack it or get it resubbed, I'll always have the option. But it's not a card I plan on moving because I did pack pull it. So I think of it as, do I someday want to crack out of this 8? Possibly. Do I need to right now as an urgent? Probably not.
You have such great luck pulling big time cards out of packs.
That might have been the luckiest I've ever gotten in my life.
Because you've pulled that one. And then if you just reference our last episode of hobby expansion and retention, talking about some of your pulls as a kid, pulling that, or actually even more recently, that Jim Brown auto and the Derek Jeter patch auto. Is it just me, or are you like really have like the magic hands in these pack pulled scenarios?
Was that a magic reference to the card that you were just holding up?
Oh no, it's not. But thank you for
No, I mean, 20 years of collecting, you're bound to hit a few good cards here and there.
Okay, so it's more just the
Numbers game.
nature of the time.
No,
Now,
I didn't rip that much in my lifetime. I did get lucky a few times. I'll admit that.
So that Tatum, here's let's get more specific with talking about cracking it or keeping it in the BGS 8 slab. Now with that Tatum, because everything else is a great grade on it, other than the centering, which seems like very debatable, a robbery, we would say, for that card in particular. Because if you cracked it, you wouldn't have to explain to anybody else what's wrong with that card. Like, oh, it has a soft corner, or oh, it has some edge wear, because everything else is really good grade wise on that. You wouldn't even have to mention the centering because to the eye, and probably to a lot of other graders, maybe even, the centering looks good. Like, the card's off center to begin with, just based on the design. So would that affect your likelihood to crack it in addition? Because I might have to explain, especially on a higher end product being flawless here, hey, this Magic has a soft corner, 7.5 corners. So in your situation, you wouldn't really have to explain that. Does that factor into your decision to crack it too?
Well, I think it kind of ties into the theme today of falling out of love with the card. That if I fell out of love with that card and I knew I was moving on from it, it would probably make sense to crack it, try to get a better grade, and make as much money as I can on it. But because
Mhm.
that's a card I'm PCing for a number of reasons, the uniqueness, the story behind the set, it is my only Tatum card. So I feel like my collection needs a Tatum. I have my one. And the fact that I pack pulled it, it's going to be a PC card. So for me,
Yeah.
it's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
I know it's being preserved. Maybe one day I'm in a situation where there's a streamlined process between cracking a Beckett slab and getting a PSA grade that I don't have to worry about all the hassle. But right now, it's in my personal collection. It's there to stay. So I'm totally content keeping it where it is.
Okay. I got you. Yeah, because I think if I was in a rush to move off this Magic, which I'm not, and that's part of the nice thing about when you fall out of love with a PC card, like as long as there's still some love there, you can still keep it until you get that right offer. It seems like a very rare situation where you'd say, "Oh, all of a sudden this card that was in my PC, now I hate it. I got to sell it immediately." Like you can still wait for the right offer. So maybe if I was like really, in a situation that you just presented where you're like, oh, "Okay, really want to move off of this and make it as valuable as I can." Now I'll crack it because sometimes a raw card might be better than a BGS 8 in certain situations where, especially if people think, oh, I could grade that and get a better grade. If there's like a possibility for a 9 there, a lot of people are like way more infatuated with the gamble they could take rather than already knowing for sure it's an 8.
Yeah. In your situation, though, I don't know. I don't know what I would do if I were you.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone's necessarily buying that card for the grade. I think it's
that's
the
true
card.
too.
That's numbered
That's
out
true
of
too.
what?
Numbered out of 10.
There you go. I
But
just had
like,
a
no, go
yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
No, I mean, kind of unrelated, but we keep thinking about like falling out of love with the card. I remember early, maybe mid 2020, when I was sending cards into grade for $20 a pop, and I got a Russell Wilson 2012 tops base rookie card, and it came back in a PSA 10. And I swear I remember having the exact thought to myself, "Are you kidding me? Russell Wilson, PSA 10, Hall of Famer? Man, I'm keeping this card forever." Joke's on me, right? So
Yeah.
falling out of love with the card, I think part of that is just growing and maturing as a collector.
Yeah. That's true too, and that happens over time. And also Russell Wilson
Bum.
could be a decent. Oh, don't say that. Come on. You're
Yeah.
gonna call him a bum now? What about his full career?
He won a Super Bowl. I hear too many weird things about Russell Wilson and his teammates' perception of him.
Oh, that
Remember,
he's
remember
kind
the
of
whole thing with the doing like exercises and high knees on the plane? Like, nah, too much, not for me.
because he's a little too much, a little corny
Yeah, let's go. He actually probably fit in well with us.
with the with the Broncos country. Let's ride.
That's right. Oh,
That
exactly.
that
Exactly.
whole thing.
Right.
Yeah, I could see, but this could be a resurgence for Russell Wilson with the new coach. New year. I don't
Fair.
know. Could be different. But yeah, another one that you might be surprised, Craig, that I have fallen out of love with a little bit, not fully, is my Larry Bird 1 of 1 here.
Really?
And I'm comfortable having a little therapy session because sometimes that's what our episodes are. But it's the Larry Bird impeccable 1 of 1 on card auto with the game used jersey that has the stripe, which I think is probably from the arm shoulder piece of the jersey. PSA 9 with a 10 auto. One of my best cards. But it's a similar reason to your McKinney, because I would say McKinney is right. Is he your top guy who you PC?
I only
Of-
own 4 McKinney cards, so I feel it's kind of hard to say that. But yeah, he's someone I seek out when I'm going to a show. Yes.
Okay. So like Larry Bird would be, on par with the PC guys that, your PC level of McKinney, because he's my number one guy who I PC. And then Magic would be in there and Tiger. Those are my top 3 guys that I think most people who tune in would know by now. But because I have the flawless that I like more, even though it's not a 1 of 1, but with the chunky patch and it's flawless, which is my favorite brand, and it's in a better grade of a BGS 9.5 compared to a PSA 9, I've fallen out of love with the bird a little bit because I love the flawless other bird that I have more. And another factor that I would throw into the reasons for falling out of love with a PC card is how much money you have invested in the bird or in the card, but in my case, the bird. So like I have 3K into this bird, and so I'm wondering to myself, would I rather have 3K or hopefully more? You know, I always hope to make a profit, or would I rather have that bird? And so because I have the other bird that I have 3,400 into, I kind of don't want two birds of that high of value of a few thousand. You know what I mean? So like that's causing me to want to maybe turn that one of one bird into more liquid stuff that I can maybe get something else or turn into, more profit as opposed to keeping that locked up in my PC. And now I have $6,400 worth of two bird cards in my PC.
I get it. Listen, like this Erling Haaland red refractor. I don't know if you're following. He is on absolute fire right now.
Yeah, from what you're telling me, yeah.
I would not sell that card for $100. I wouldn't. I would sell it for $1,000,000. I think people would.
Okay.
There's a threshold somewhere in between 100 and 1,000,000, somewhere in there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I've never had this situation yet where there's a card of mine that I absolutely love in my PC, but someone offered me just a value I can't refuse. So if
Yeah.
that situation comes up, we may have to come on here and do a little emergency therapy session before I sell said card. Everything's got a price.
Yeah,
Everything has a price.
exactly. And we talked about it too. I was like presenting you with situations and scenarios after we recorded our last episode.
Mhm.
And I'm like, knowing what you have into it, what would you take for that? Like, cause and everybody's human. Like once that money's in front of you, it's a much different story compared to when you're just thinking of that number in your head. Like you're like,
Yep.
I wouldn't sell that for whatever, 2 grand. And then you're like, somebody comes up to your table at a show and like, hey, I have 2 grand cash. I'm gonna offer that on your card. And you're like, oh,
Put it in front of you.
now it feels a little different. Now it feels a little different if I can put that 2 grand in my fanny pack and walk around the show and see what I can do with it, or just have $2,000 to pounce on any situation that pops up, whether that be for another PC card or to just know that you can try to buy stuff at like 80% of comps and keep that wheel turning for flipping. So, because that's what happened with my Tiger card at the Burbank show, that, dual piece of the match used shirt, the golf gear, the birdie edition, that was the BGS 9.5 with the on card auto. And I had a $3,500 price tag on it. And the last comp was 3K. But when I got it, I traded into it for 2K because that was the previous last comp. So I'm like, oh, I don't want to move this card, but I fell out of love with it when I fell more in love with the cash of a 3K offer. So I'm like, what do I want more? Am I really in love with this for my PC for the long term? Or would I rather have 1,000? Actually, it was close to an $1,100 profit on that card. That really, when the price was right, I fell out of love with that card in my PC.
You know what's an easy way to fall out of love with the card?
What?
Quick jab to anyone on Instagram who does this. When you list a card for, I don't know, a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth time in a row, I'd fall out of love with that card too. If you so desperately trying to get rid of it and no one wants it.
Yeah, that's true too.
But anyway,
You keep getting rejected to sell it, and then you're like, all
what
of a
is it?
sudden you're like,
Damaged goods.
yeah, you steadily go from, this is a PC card, I'm gonna stick to this value. There's no way I'm selling this for less. I'm gonna list it high and keep it in my PC unless somebody hits that value. And then the next second, third, fourth time you list it, you're like, I don't know if I really like this card that much. And then you're like, and then you're like, I actually am starting to dislike this card. and then by the 10th time you're listing it, or hopefully you don't have to list it that many times if you're trying to sell it, but then you get that little sour taste in your mouth and you are just willing to move off it for much less than what you thought, so it's also different if you PC stuff and you're putting it away versus like what Rob, our buddy at the Sports Card Therapist, also does that I've really liked, where he prices his cards that are in his PC high, puts them in his case, and if that right offer comes along or the opportunity to trade into something better of that guy or of just a different card comes along that you might like more, you still allow yourself to have those opportunities, even using your PC cards as a vehicle to possibly get into something else, which I think is smart, because you lock away your PC cards and sometimes you might miss out on an opportunity for something you could like more.
Fair. And last point until we get to some pickups related to our good friend Rob, the sports card therapist, is the way he's been collecting now has been Hall of Fame rookie on card autographs. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure there was a time period where Rob was just collecting significant rookie cards. Forget about the autographs.
Right.
So it's like once you get a little taste of that on card autograph, you fall out of love with the basic stuff. And
Yeah.
again, it goes back to that point, the original point I made. When you sit courtside, it's hard to go right to the nosebleeds.
Yeah. And then when you start getting something unique, it's hard to go back to the commons.
There you go.
So what should we go through with were you going to get into some pickups?
Yeah, only one pickup. You know what? I actually have a bunch of stuff coming in the mail. I am having such a good time not buying lots, but a card here, a card
Yeah.
there. This
Yeah.
is a one I just picked up. This is from this year's Prism World
Ooh,
Cup.
yes, you showed me that. You showed me that.
Uh,
That's nice.
so here's a fun little fact about this: is Prism nowadays there's so many parallels,
Yep.
but Prism World Cup only comes out every 4 years, so 2014, 18, and 22. And there are only, I wrote it on my Instagram caption for this card, but there are only 8 parallels. I think it's like red, blue, purple,
Yep.
gold power, black. I think I'm missing one that have been in all 3 years. So that made me
Okay.
think a lot about continuity and how important that is when looking to pick up a card, because it appears as if the red prism will always stand the test of time. And it's
Yeah.
Messi from his World Cup winning year.
Yes. And I loved your caption on Instagram too, because you were like, another reason why that could be cool for your PC is, he finally won his first and only World Cup that year. And you wrote it really well on Instagram saying like, this is who we'll remember from that World Cup. Also Mbappe with his incredible 3-goal performance in a losing effort in the World Cup final. But that's the World Cup that Messi won his first and only one and cemented him even more as one of the GOATs.
Exactly. I try to put thought into my captions.
It was great.
Passion behind the cards.
Yes, I loved that. And here's another reason, Craig, and I'm just thinking about it now, of another thing that's helping me fall out of love with or lose a little bit of love for the Magic Flawless Auto is that I just picked up this beautiful Flawless game used patch numbered out of 25, but it's the J of Johnson on the Magic Johnson jersey. And I just look at this card that I got from Empire State Sports Cards on Instagram, and I'm like, this is a PC card, because I've never seen one like this with a patch with the J, it being the first letter of his last name, a full letter, similar to the DeMar DeRozan game used patch that I brought in, that I have really been like thinking about PCing not just game used patches, but game used letters, because that's even cooler and more rare. That, and the DeRozan has the R letter from his game used jersey. And plus, it's my favorite brand with it being flawless. So I'm like, that's a perfect PC pickup for me, even if it influences me falling out of love with a different PC card. And that's an awesome Giannis right there, the Game Gear.
I think it's the letter O.
So that's super cool too. And that's something you don't see hardly ever. So that's one of the reasons why I was thinking that we're getting into actually a better topic of falling into love with a PC card. And two more pickups that I wanted to talk about because they're PC cards. This Wilt Chamberlain exquisite game used jersey numbered out of 25. And remember, I think I mentioned on one of our previous episodes the Bill Russell from the same set, Craig. Same set, game used piece of the warm-up jersey or warm-up shirt because it has the wool on it, also numbered out of 25. And then, so I picked up that Wilt, same set. You know, you have the classic rivalry. And
great set. That's the MJ.
Great.
Did you see the MJ?
Yes, that's the one you have. Oh,
Same
cool.
set.
Okay.
Amazing. So for anyone who's listening, it's 2006, 2007, extra exquisite quad game worn jersey. Great set.
Yeah. And that's awesome that you also have one from the same set. So you have the Jordan. I have now we're twinning. I have the Russell and the Chamberlain. So I posted that Wilt when I got it. And then I posted the Russell right after. Like, what a pairing for, now, because I was considering moving the Russell, but then once I got the Wilt to go with it, I'm like, gotta keep that
pieces.
Timeless and such old game used materials too. You rarely see game used stuff pop up from Russell and Wilt. And your Jordan is also super cool. So once I posted the Wilt and the Bill, I knew they were from the same year, of course, same set with that extra exquisite quad, also numbered out of 25. One of my buddies on Instagram pointed it out, and he's like, dude, that's awesome. They match. I'm like, yeah, I know. He's like, no, not only that, they're both number 9 out of 25. Wow. So they're the same serial number from the same set of the same year from one of the all-time great rivalries between two guys and two teams. And I'm like, it blew my mind. I'm like, this was meant to be PC. So falling into love with those two PC cards there and the Magic patch at the same time.
Wow. Yeah, see, those are the types of cards. A Bill Russell quad game worn, Wilt quad game worn from a brand like Exquisite in the mid 2000s. That's one of those types of cards that you could hold on to forever and never, ever have to worry about something like that losing value. It's always going to be a story to tell.
Yep.
So great pickups there. I support that. Those are two types of cards. Personally, if I saw at a show, I would probably inquire about.
Yeah. And I got the Russell at the Burbank show, showed it off in the vlog. Mm-hmm. And you got that Jordan at National, right?
I did, yes. National. Good way to end the show and talk about the Wolfpack trade night, the Friday night of National.
Yes.
So that's happening. That's a real thing.
Yeah, that was crazy. Organized by some of the more adult members of our Wolfpack. You know, we're the youngsters. We bring the youth.
Yeah, we still sit at the kids' table. That's fine.
Hey, if I'm going to sit at the kids' table, it would be with you. The heart emojis are flying from our virtual love fest. So, yes, the Wolfpack trade night and hobby hangout. I'm just reading off the official flyer. July 28th, which is the Friday, right? You said?
Friday night of National. Thursday is Card Collector 2's trade night. Friday night is the Wolfpack event. It's the only event that I know of happening Friday night of National.
And it will definitely be one to go to. It's right across from the actual National in Rosemont, Illinois, which a lot of people, it's Rosemont, right?
It's not Chicago. It's Rosemont.
Yeah. Okay. It's advertised as Chicago.
We'll still say it's summertime shy because it sounds cool.
I like it. So it's from 6 to 9 in the evening at the Crown Plaza, 5440 North River Road, directly across the street from the National. Cash bar, live DJ, hopefully live dancing from, as you like to say, the best dancer in the hobby, the Michael Jackson impersonator, the people's mailman, Oz, we hope to see some moves. So that's a direct request for one of our Wolfpack members. Giveaways and more. So, of course, Rob, sports card therapist, is going to be there. The cousins, Tony and Oz. Us, the 2 members of Crosstown Cardboard. Ken at Sports Card Lessons. And Dave, DJ Sports Cards 86. So
Nailed it.
that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool
Pretty
to have a
cool.
Wolfpack trade night on the Friday of National. That's big stuff from our guys there. So shout out to them for really being behind organizing it.
Mm-hmm.
And Craig, you will be attending trade night, or you won't be attending, because I know you're trying to push back your flight with a wedding on that Saturday.
That's it. Trying to push my flight at least a couple hours, but I'll be present one way or another. Couple months away, couple months till national.
I know. So I'll be there as well, and so will everybody else in the Wolfpack. So if you have to leave early, I'll just get you on the FaceTime, and we can talk while you're going through TSA or while you're in the Uber or whatever until you get on the flight. So because you can't have that FOMO from missing, such a cool event and such a big step forward for all of us to
Pretty crazy. 4 months
be hosting a trade night at National. I mean, that's like a pat on the back for everybody in the Wolfpack right there. That's cool.
And our network, because we want everyone that we know should get to enjoy this. 4 months from now, 4 months. Until then, Carmine, I am going to a show Sunday. I'm very excited to walk the show. It's been a minute since I've walked the show. John from Behind the Diamond is having his Babylon show.
Great guy.
And I will be at trade night next week, but we'll record an episode before then. So maybe we could talk about the show at our next episode.
Yes, for sure, bro. So what are you looking for real quick?
Nothing. Whatever catches my eye.
As always. Just open to the opportunities.
Open to anything.
All right, big dog. I think we went through some reasons of falling out of love with a PC card. And then, of course, because our heart is in the hobby, falling into love with other PC cards. So I really enjoyed this one.
Love for all.
That's right.
Love for all who have love for all.
Oh, a poetic way to end episode 24. All right, bro.
Knicks lost. Julius Randle wasted 57-point performance.
Man.
Yeah. Almost dropped a 60 burger in a loss, but hey, playoffs are around the corner, baby. Let's go Knicks.
Let's go. New York sports are back. Sources are saying.
Wait. Still back.
Okay. Confirmed.
Cool. Good to know.
All right, bro.
Peace.